Welcome to Detox, the design podcast. I hope you're all doing well. And for you, curious bunch of folks, I have yet another episode. This conversation is mind blowing. And this is with Nick Talbot, the global design and innovation head for Tata Elxsi. He's been working in the design space for quite a bit, for so many years, so much of experience, so many projects that he's worked on. One example that I can quote is Aircruise that he worked on. Go ahead and check it out. It's an amazing project that you definitely would learn from. And second, he's been leading design teams for a while now, and he's been working in different areas. He's been applying design thinking, enabling design thinking in different domains. Let it be broadcast, let it be communication, let it be automotive, let it be healthcare, and in technology as well. Now, Tata Elxsi also came up with a great design concept in 2020 in mixed reality, where the product does not rely on the visual feedback but on the auditory feedback. So which is again another interesting aspect for me. A lot of companies, big companies working towards the headset, the headgear. I think it will be simplified to a point where we would not have to wear the headset anymore. And that is when I think it would have evolved to a point where we can use it without having to bear the weight of that headset. So it was interesting to discuss about this with Nick as well. And we talk about what design is to start the conversation with. Then we delve deeper into what design thinking is about and how even startups can apply that within their teams, and how they can hire designers and lead a team of designers. And then we talk about the future as well. How is it going to turn out with AI evolving so rapidly? And yes, we do discuss this about, will AI replace designers? So stay tuned and listen to the conversation. And if you have any doubts, anything, leave it in the comments below and I will definitely answer to those questions. Enjoy the conversation. How are you, Nick?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. How are you? Where are you?
I am actually in Hyderabad and I'm doing good.
Ah, wonderful. Yeah, great city.
Yeah, it is. Actually, you've been to Hyderabad.
I have, yes. Yes, a couple of times, but some years back when I lived in India.
You were here for almost a few years, right? You moved to India
Yes,
in 2011 or 12, I think.
yes. I think it was 2011, a
2011.
while ago now. Yeah, I moved with my family. I was there for 4 and a bit years, which is wonderful experience.
Oh, wow. Nice. So one of my friends works at Tata Elxsi. He's an advanced
Really?
automotive designer. Yeah, Prashant Vantimitta, his name.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, he is a dear friend of mine.
Wonderful.
As we start the discussion, given your experience, something that I really wanted to ask you was, what is design to you? What is your interpretation of design?
Very interesting question. I mean, one of the challenges when you describe what you do is that it encompasses so many things, right?
Mm.
So um, there's fashion design, there's industrial design, of course, increasingly huge amounts of activity in digital design.
Yeah,
But without sounding overly logical about this, essentially it's about finding uh, an unexpected but relevant solution to the needs of your end customer. So we're very clear this has to be user centric, whether it's digital, whether it's furniture, doesn't really matter. We're seeking to meet the needs or the evolving needs of increasingly sophisticated and demanding consumers. But equally, we design has to take account of business needs as well, right? So
right.
understanding supply chain, understanding the background to what makes a business tick. Um, it's important to always remember that businesses need to survive. Obviously, they need to be viable.
Yeah,
So design needs to take account of all of those needs as well. Whether it's in a physical product, how easy is it to manufacture? how much cost is involved, and so on and so forth. And what we now know is that what is as vital is how we take care of the planet. So
Mm,
in pretty much everything we do, sustainability is now a much bigger priority than it was perhaps 10 years ago.
right.
So it's balancing out all of those elements, but the magic bit is when you can also deliver something that has some emotional resonance to consumers, right? So function is one thing, manufacturing and cost is another. But at the end of the day, to be successful, I believe that design needs to bring something really emotional. Could be a very simple, tiny product, or it could be something as complex as an operating system.
Mm,
But at the end of the day, people like to be touched in their hearts as much as in their minds. So that's what it is for me. All of those, and really, that's what design thinking is being able to think about all of those
yeah.
factors and use, I would say, is critical thinking to really work out where the best balance between all of those things is. So being creative is one thing, having enough knowledge and experience to do the edit and pick the right direction is, I think, probably the biggest challenge for designers.
Uh, it's very interesting to see that you've touched upon emotional uh, aspect of design there. Now, I want to bring it back to the Indian context, and I know like it's an interesting market. It's a price sensitive market. Uh,
Absolutely.
Right. I've lived in Europe for a couple of years for my master's and then came back. I saw the
Mhm.
difference myself and I moved like a couple of years later. So it was
Yes.
quite a bit of a difference. So would this let's say definition of design or how we are understanding design in the
Mm.
Indian aspect, would it change? How difficult is it for the emotional aspect of it with the Indian market?
I think, do you know what? It's very dependent on the category that you're talking about. So if we're talking about domestic appliances, I think there's less emotion than perhaps there are in some other markets. It's really about getting the biggest bang for the buck. So what functionality and reliability and durability, that's one thing that really strikes me, is if people are going to, let's say, middle of the pyramid consumers are going to buy something, they expect it to last forever and do whatever they need to do. If we move to, for example, electronics products, I think people are a bit less price sensitive if they feel that it's going to let them do more in their lives.
Right.
If we talk about, I mean, a very Indian specific thing, if we think about jewelry, if we think about fashion, we think about, the whole wedding tradition, for example. I hope I'm not going too far off path here, but in that case, people will spend whatever they need to spend to make that special.
Yeah.
Um, but where it all circles back, so for example, in the automotive business, we do a lot of auto design, as you said earlier on. Um, Delivering connected, sophisticated digital services in vehicle is expected.
Mm,
The difficulty is how then does the OEM afford to deliver all of that? So I'm not saying it all goes back to price, but certainly I think there's a bigger difference depending on what you're designing,
mm,
between the way that Indian consumers respond perhaps to other parts of the world. And
interesting.
I wonder if that reflects your experience of moving from Europe back to India.
It's actually, I think, quite a bit of a difference. Actually, just 2 years, like 2016 to 2018,
Mm,
made quite a bit of a change in India.
mhm,
The way things were being perceived, the way art was being perceived, for the matter. I
yeah,
was doing a lot of exhibitions before, like art exhibitions, illustrations, before
mm,
going for my masters, and then after
yes,
I moved back, I see a lot of it, like appreciation for art in general.
yes,
It has
yes,
definitely increased. So
yes.
it's quite a transition. So
I
that's
I agree. I mean, to just a brief point, I saw in the briefing note, big changes that I see.
yeah.
Um, More a very clear trend to appreciation of art and actually of design.
Hmm,
I think the sensitivity, amongst consumers, amongst the population, to something that is well built, well crafted, has increased. So there's less places to hide for, and again, whether that's physical design or digital, people have very rapidly become educated. Even interpersonally within peer groups, I
Right.
think that those are discussions that are happening that didn't happen maybe 10 years ago.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now we have IKEA here in Hyderabad. This we did not
Yes.
have like 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
this definitely has changed, and how people are interested in buying those kind of products, Scandinavian design, how they're adapting to it. It's very interesting to see.
Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. And so like when we look at the future of design in India, like
Mm,
we've already started adapting to it.
mm,
But when we look at the future, uh, w- from your perspective, you've been observing the Indian market for a
mm.
bit. So, what do you think how this market will evolve in terms of
Mhm.
design?
I think the first thing I'd say, it's a build on the point recently.
Mm,
Many more people are becoming more demanding about the quality
mm,
of design, but also of manufacture in what they buy and what they invest in. And I think that trend is across pretty much every category. So if I think again automotive, I think back to some of the vehicles that I was driving around in when I was there,
mm,
and when I look out today, I stand out with my cup of tea outside Tata Elxsi HQ in Bangalore.
right.
Uh, the vehicle landscape has been transformed. So much more,
Yeah.
uh, if I can call it this, modern or futuristic design. Many more features in the vehicle, and that's true as I walk around, as I do on my weekend off. If I walk around a mall and
Yeah.
look at the quality of everything, including the quality of retail, right? So the way all of this is being presented. So I think that trend won't stop. If anything, it's going to accelerate. And I think consumers, the more they learn, the more they demand.
Right.
But they still want a good price.
Yeah. I think that it will take a lot of time for that to change. Maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
mean, one thing that really fascinates me, and I can't answer it, but our research teams do a lot of work in this area,
Mhm.
is whether the aspiration for design, that's form, fit, function, color, materials, etc., whether the appetite is there for, let's say, European or Western design,
Mm,
or whether there's actually something unique that's going to come to the surface that has got somehow its roots in India.
mm.
And I have seen some evidence of that. So what's fascinating is that maybe some new hybrid is going to appear in the landscape.
Right. Interesting. That's a very interesting point because I have been noticing in the real estate side of the domain
Mm,
how new and upcoming projects that are coming up, especially in Hyderabad and other South Indian cities, uh,
mhm,
they are more closer to, let's say, farming plots, which are taking them back to the lifestyle that we had before. So closer to the
mhm,
roots, and that is their, let's say, selling point. That's how
mhm.
they are building the story around it. So
Yes.
something closer to the roots, something
Mm,
closer to Indian culture is what
mhm.
is prevalent now, which I see in a lot of fabrics as well. They have patterns and things that are coming on the fabrics right now. So there are a lot of
Yeah.
trends pointing towards that direction when you say. So I am actually able to connect the dots now.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I mean, part of that in real estate, part of that could be a reaction to urban living. Let's be frank, the madness of urban living versus having some space just to kick back a bit and have time for ourselves and our health and our mental health and so on. So I think that's part of what's driving that trend.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely an interesting space to be right now to see all of these
Yes.
happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when we're looking at these things happening, we also see a lot of startups coming up
Hmm.
in the Indian like startup ecosystem. And
Certainly.
Yes. So, uh, but still, so I am working from a co-working space here in Hyderabad, and I see a lot of startups here as well. But
Mm,
tech-driven, technology comes
mhm.
first.
Of
So
course.
devs are the first people to be on the team, developers, and So design still doesn't come first. Like
Mhm.
founders don't think about design yet in the first
Yes.
phase of the inception of the idea or whatever. So
Yeah.
if they have to sort of go through the process of finding a designer and
Mhm.
building a team of designers and then leading a team of designers. So
Mm,
I'd like your input on that because you've had a vast experience of, leading design teams. And I've seen
mm.
the Aircruise project that you've worked on. It was amazing. It was a
Wonderful.
treat to watch.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's a good example. Um, if you're finding a designer and you're a very tech-driven company, you want to find somebody that has enough awareness of the tech side of things, so they don't end up being, let's say, alien. They have to have some technical understanding, so they don't end up just talking rubbish, and then everyone gets irritated. And I mean, the most important thing is that people work together. It's certainly not the case that a designer day one designer is sitting there on his own,
Mm,
um, and no one quite knows what they need to task them with.
yeah.
So definitely a very strong sense of user centricity,
Mm,
not to do with tech, everything to do with the consumer, but with enough, let's say, interpersonal skills to integrate into a team. So what I'm saying is design and a designer won't do anything unless it's completely integrated.
mm,
Second point is that that first designer on day one has to have the energy to evangelize about design, right? And actually, in some sense, educate the other people in that startup or that organization what it is and why it's important. From there, so that's the beginnings of a culture of design, right? Even if you're hardcore techie and you're programming all day, if you've got an awareness of why the end consumer of whatever you're doing will find, ease of use, being intuitive, actually aesthetically looking beautiful. If you understand why that's important, then it's likely that design will become integrated into the organization. And once that's there, everyone would then say, well, yeah, we probably need more of this stuff. And then that's how you build a team.
mm,
So without sounding too fluffy, it's actually at the end of the day, it's about the culture of the company.
mm,
If that founder doesn't really in their heart understand why design is important,
right.
then why would they be motivated to integrate design into the organization? In terms of design leadership, again, the most important thing, back to Aircruise, is finding a group that have got the vision, who are prepared to look into the future.
Right.
And yeah, it might be that they end up challenging the original logic of why the business is founded or what it delivers, but having people that have got the time and space to look beyond and actually imagine the future
Mm,
is one of the most powerful things that design can do. So, you know, version one is done, version two is out. Part of a designer's job, working with the technical specialist, is say, well, what does version 10 look like?
right.
Why is that going to accelerate our business? And how do we map out a strategy to get from where we are today to that version 10, for example?
Mm,
Quite often, I've experienced with startups, it's very practical. They're running so fast just to get to the next round of funding
yeah.
that looking 2 or 3 or 5 years out, there just isn't the brain space to do that.
Yeah.
But if you've got a designer who's got the space to do that and maybe is under less pressure to deliver whatever they've got to deliver this quarter, then you've got a vision and then you've got a strategy for the future.
Mm,
And quite often, in my experience, that's what investors are looking for, is not just what you're doing today, but what you're going to be doing in 10 years' time. Here's what it looks like. Here's what it might cost to get there. But by the way, here are all the benefits of being visionary.
Right. Wow. Interesting. And so when we think about, let's say, so this is primarily design thinking at work,
Mhm.
right from the day one of that, when we start working on a concept, right? So
Yes.
uh, just taking a leap from here, from startups to Tata Elxsi,
Hmm.
uh, spanning across many diverse industries,
Yes.
communications, broadcast, then automotive, healthcare. So how
Mhm.
how does uh, uh, how do you apply, or let's say, uh, enable design thinking across different industries and different sets of people as well?
Yes. Yes. So one of the things, for example, that we do internally is we hold what we call design yatras,
Mhm.
and that's open to everyone across the organization. Internally, there's a lot of communication about what the design teams are doing and specific, innovations that they're working on, some of which are secret externally.
Mhm.
So, and I think most importantly of all, if I come back to culture, the senior leadership of Tata Elxsi has always been committed to the fact that we are a design and engineering firm.
Mm,
They believe in the value that creative thinking can bring. So with that level of support, even though we work in diverse industries, everybody is aware that rather than just, let's say, sitting back and waiting for some briefing for some project to come from a client, everybody has got the freedom to be proactive and actually think in a more creative way across the organization. And within the industrial design team, we continually encourage people to come forward if they think they've got a great idea that might have value that can be developed. And it's really important that we just keep a culture of design thinking, not only within the design team, but actually across the organization.
mm,
And yes, we work in many diverse areas, but whether it's a rail project, UI UX project for a big broadcaster, we always start at the same place, which is number one, what does the consumer need? Number two, is there some innovation that we can bring to this vehicle or this platform or this healthcare device? There's some innovation that might not just be technically enabled, it might be to do with reducing cost or whatever. And then the final part is how can we deliver that to our client in an efficient way? So a few simple principles that we ask people to think about, whether they're designing a bit of hardware or whatever it is. So, it's, I
right.
mean, part of what design does is let everybody on a team, including the client side, see
Mm,
the bigger picture, right? Let's remember why we're putting effort and time into
yeah,
doing this. That isn't just about some plugin that you're working on, even though that's important. The bigger picture is to deliver something better.
yeah.
If you've got a vision of that, it might only be a very early concept, and that on the team, then it's easier for everybody to pull in the same direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned healthcare and like technology, right?
Yes.
Now, I happen to go through the concept assistive gear for autism, people with autism and Alzheimer's that Tata
Yes.
Elxsi worked on.
Yes.
It's a great concept, and for mixed reality, in mixed reality, and not taking visible feedback as a key aspect, but relying
Yes.
on the auditory aspect. It was
Yes.
very interesting for me because uh, so something that I have is a very controversial opinion
Hmm.
among my peers. I always say that these headsets are too, it's not there yet. I always say
Hmm.
it's not there yet
Yes.
because if we are
Mm.
adding something, a weight on top of our
Mhm.
face, then maybe it's not
Yes.
there yet. So,
Yeah, I agree. Although
and
although I haven't had a chance to try the
vision,
Apple product yet.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm yet to
I
try
haven't
that.
had a chance. Yes, but that doesn't change the fact, and this is also maybe controversial, but in my opinion, doesn't really matter how high res or amazing or whatever it is. In general life,
Yeah.
having something strapped to your face
Yeah.
uh, doesn't feel intuitive or doesn't feel um, human enough to
Right.
be something that would drive mass adoption.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh, so now that actually brought me to the point where so I had gone through this book called The Second Bounce of the Ball by Ronald Cohen, where he talks about the second opportunity after the first setback. It's here I'm talking about blockchain, crypto, metaverse, now AI. So it's
Mm,
like with every bounce of the ball the colors are changing, so it's different things every time. And now
sure.
investors and the people working in this in let's say even startups or even companies, earlier they were very interested in metaverse and now they're interested in AI. So
Yes.
how do you see this evolving as an industry? How do you see AI evolving in the future?
Well, I think what we're going to see is ever more capable, ever more connected systems that will, number one, generate content. So that isn't just in the industrial design sphere. We're already seeing it in people that are making videos, people that are making animations.
Mm,
Um, what that does is enable more people, companies, but also individuals to create stuff.
right.
Uh, I'm sure you've seen there's been a lot of chatter about does that mean the end of the designer as we know it and so
Yeah.
on. There's no running away from the fact that these tools are going to become ever more sophisticated and ever more available. But so there's no point trying to run away from that or ignore it. I think we collectively just have to embrace it
Yep.
and accept that the speed and the quality of the output in whatever domain you're working in is probably going to increase, which actually is a good thing. There are certain parts of the design process that are time consuming and painful, as they were pre 3D systems. When I'm old enough, God help me, that I started life drawing things in 2D on a massive drawing board.
Yeah.
Um, so it's the analogy is the same. They're just tools.
Hmm.
It still takes a designer, in my opinion, to be very clear on what the brief is,
Hmm.
right? To understand what your objective is, to understand what the parameters for success look like. Um, so yes, I can get an AI system to spit out 50 concepts in a morning,
Right.
uh, but the important thing is that somebody still picks the right one or two to then go on and develop, right? So I don't think it's the death of design or designers.
Yeah.
I think it just makes sensitivity and editorial more important.
Right.
In fact, we just a little bit of insight. The team and myself, based out of our London studio, spent a day. We had the luxury of one day,
Hmm.
essentially playing around with all the different AI tools that are available.
Wow.
And one of my guys said, the only problem with this is I could sit here for the next week just playing and seeing, what the system's going to
Hmm.
throw at me. So uh, it's a strange paradox, but I think using these tools, has to be done with a degree of direction and discipline.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you end up with, yeah, if you want, you can fill your whole hard drive up with different ideas and what have you. Who's going to make the decision? And if there are 10,000 of them, that decision is going to become very, very difficult.
Yeah. That's true.
But having said that, if we think about AI in the context of hardcore engineering and engineering development, imagine how many optimized products, how many optimized services we can get to more quickly.
Hmm.
Um, if I think about AI in simulation, right? So I put some text in saying I need this object to be 20% lighter. but still better, stiffer, whatever it might be, please go and run the numbers on what that thing should be. That can only be a good thing if we circle back to sustainability. And
Yeah.
so using these tools in the right way to solve big problems,
Mm.
as we're seeing in the medical and molecule business,
Yeah.
AI is helping people discover new drugs and so on. And I see that analogy as being just as relevant in the world of design.
Very interesting. I think there's a lot more to learn for even the designers like myself because
Yes,
things are changing
and
so fast.
and me too, because they are changing very fast. Yeah,
Something that I think version 5 of Mid Journey came out last week or so. I haven't even tried that yet, but
I
it's
haven't tried it either. Yeah,
insane to see those posts on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I'm
yeah,
actually very curious to see what happens next.
yeah,
Eh,
yeah. I mean, one thing that has always fascinated me, even pre this stuff being real, is how it's going to liberate,
mm,
normal people, let's say, potentially to do a whole bunch of creative stuff. I mean, it could be that I don't know, a friend of mine decides they want to make a 10-minute movie that they've had in their mind for
Yeah,
years and years.
yeah,
No chance of them being able to afford to do that or go to a production company, blah blah blah.
mm,
Maybe the tools are coming up now that they can script, uh, render, edit from a home PC, and then that movie's made. So I don't know where that will go, but I find that idea very liberating.
yeah, yeah. Actually, I didn't think of it that way till now. Actually, to be
Mm,
liberating, that's a really nice way to put it. Actually.
yeah.
Uh, So with you've seen in your journey quite a bit of changes in the design domain and all the other domains as well as you've been working
Mm,
for quite a bit. Uh,
mm,
so on a personal note, uh, what are the few things that you can mention that you wish you had known earlier?
mm. I would say the pace of change in digital,
Hmm,
if I'd known maybe 10 years ago what was going to happen in connected devices, in applications everywhere,
hmm,
then that might have made my life a bit easier or a bit better potentially. So I think the advance of digital,
hmm,
um, I think I wish I'd known more about, which is why AI now fascinates me so much, because that's clearly the next horizon that we're on.
hmm,
Second point, I think, is to do with sustainability. Designers that create things that end up being put out into the world in the hundreds of millions, I think we always felt deep down there was something not right about that model. So uh, perhaps more information and more knowledge about how we could have made some of what we do more circular and more sustainable much earlier on. I mean, there were always thought leaders in this space, but guess what? We were doing the day job, so we just kind of went along.
hmm,
I think more knowledge about what we were doing or are doing to the planet would
hmm.
have been would have made a massive difference.
All right. So when we are looking at the, let's say, next generation of designers,
Mm,
like me and the people who are going to become designers in the next few years. So, what do you
yes.
have to say to them before we close this episode? I want to have your opinion on that, where
Hmm.
you'd give them, let's say, certain directions to go.
Mm, mm.
So, please share some.
I mean, one of the things I've always said to aspiring designers or whatever is never stop being curious about as many things as you can, right? So yeah, AI's there and blah blah blah, but be curious about the world, be curious about art, be curious about technology, be curious about people. So actually understanding human beings, understanding the environment, rather than just focusing on this thing that we're designing today, is really important, and that's part of what drives um, let me say, high quality design thinking. It's just being curious about lots of things, being able to join dots in a critical thinking way to take you towards a better solution. Um, I think the other thing is one thing that will not change is one's ability to communicate. So working on communication skills, being able and reasonably confident to sell an idea is also extremely important. I mean, half of what we do is convince people that
Yeah.
they should buy a project or buy a product. So those soft skills are very important. And I do think it's especially now with the kind of these waves of technology that are washing over us.
Mm.
Without sounding too philosophical, it's really important to remember that we're human, and what makes us human, our relationships with our brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
those should keep us grounded, and I believe make it easier to make the right choice. So I come back to my point about the edit.
Yeah.
Quite often, okay, there's marketing teams that will have a view, there's business leaders that will have a view, but quite often designers are also asked to give their opinion on what is the right thing to do.
Mm.
And if you get too carried away with tech for its own sake, then I think there's a risk that we do the wrong thing. So, remember that actually it is sometimes quite nice just to go for a walk in the sunshine and look at the birds and the flowers. And I'm sounding like a hippie now, but that is also very important, and we need to respect that and protect it.
Absolutely.
So that's the advice that I would give to designers, and it's not so very different from what the kind of advice I might have given 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Certainly about curiosity, certainly about skills, certainly about being able to communicate properly. But all of that has actually got more important because of
Mm.
where we are.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Uh, Thank you for your time, and
You're
thank
more
you
than
for
welcome.
sharing this knowledge. And I have learned a lot. And the idea of liberation for
Mm,
common people, it's still in my mind. I've never thought
yes,
about it that way. Thank you for mentioning it.
yes. You're
And
more than welcome.
time.
I mean, I enjoyed it very much. It's wonderful to have a free flowing conversation about design and how it can positively impact the world, which I believe it can and does.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. It's been great. Cheers, Sanjay.